So the ultimate goal to be an artist, as far as I've found, is to create some sort of passive income so that you can generate a base level of income and have space and time to create your fine art.
Welcome to Building Bellingham. I'm your host, Leo Cohen. Season 2 is starting off a little different than Season 1. We're not in the studio, and our conversations are live streamed onto the Building Bellingham Facebook page before they make their way here. We're a little rougher around the edges, but the core is the same. Honest conversations with local entrepreneurs, talking about challenges, failures, and the effort it takes to build a successful business. Join me as we dive into the story behind one of Bellingham's biggest brands.
Gretchen, hello.
Hello, Leo.
Welcome virtually
Thank
to the
you.
Building Bellingham podcast.
Thanks a lot for having me. It's a pleasure being here.
You are kind of an icon here in the local Bellingham community. You may not say that about yourself. I know I know it's hard to say things like that, but when I first got to Bellingham, this is a while ago, and I started seeing these huge murals popping up and going, wow, I like that. That must have been prefabricated, a facility. And then finding out that was you doing all of these amazing murals around town. Tell me a little bit about you, who you are, where you're from. Who's Gretchen?
Got it. I grew up in Denver and went to art school at Colorado State University in Fort Collins. I'm the daughter of two artists, the niece of artists, the granddaughter of artists, the stepdaughter of artists, and the sister of a ballerina and designer and architect. So I have come from a family that is very concentrated with creatives, which I wouldn't trade in for anything. I had such an inspiring family every step along the way, whether it was just finding something to do during idle time as a kid. We were a pretty TV light family. So instead of television, I got Prismacolors and Liquitex acrylic paints. So I was really spoiled with art supplies. As I got older, I felt the support of my family for every step along the way. When I would do a high school art project, my family would be entering it in local competitions and whatnot, just really trying to elevate my and pique my interest in the arts and trying to showcase it and really elevating my interest and all of my endeavors to the point that I ended up choosing it to be a career for myself. I went to college initially studying fine art, focusing on painting. And I realized a few years in that I really didn't know what to do business-wise to make a full career as an artist, in my early 20s. So I added on a degree in art history. And 1 year into my painting and art history degree, I was wondering, well, what the heck am I going to do with an art history degree? So, which is a funny career that my beloved Barack Obama actually made fun of. I'll never let him go on that one. But so I tagged on my fourth year of college an art education degree. So I triple majored, and through art education, I was able to apply all three of those: the fine art, the art history, and teaching. And I ended up teaching for 12 years in middle schools and elementary in Seattle and in Bellingham. And I would say through that practice, I really cultivated this balance of a love for art making itself, but also continuing to pique my interest in my study of fine art, just the joy that it is. 12 years into my teaching, I ended up finding myself kind of idle. I mean, 12 years of doing anything, whether it's your dream job or not, it does get a little redundant. So ironically, I approached my principal at the time at the middle school up here in Bellingham. And I said, I'm observing all of the women in my cohort getting pregnant and having babies. I'm not planning on having a baby anytime in the near future, but I would consider my art to be my baby. So can I take a little art maternity leave?
That's amazing. And what did they say?
And much to my surprise, she's like, well, actually, yes, we call that a leave of absence. So I ended up taking that leave of absence and focusing on my art baby. And within 3 months, I had to write her a very sad email and let her know that my art baby was growing quickly. And I stepped away from teaching with no regrets, but a lot of sadness because I did love that. Here I am, deep in a career of fine art.
I think a lot of kids growing up have this pressure to go through the system in a specific way. And creativity a lot of the times is stifled at an early age. Like, we have to be ready for this test and this, all of these things. And this is a whole other type of intelligence that I think is overlooked in our society. Tell me a little bit about how it was growing up with all of this support of your creativity. Instead of saying, hey, let's go out and buy this thing, maybe your parents were saying, hey, Gretchen, why don't you see if you could create something like this? What was that like for you as a kid?
Incredible. I pay any ounce of my success to my parents on multiple levels. We were never bored. They always encouraged us to use our imaginations and to dream big and to manifest our imaginations, whether that was building crazy water parks out of hoses and sleds in our backyard, or fort building, or making imaginary restaurants, just anything, to creating massive murals in our living rooms on sheets and whatnot. I see a lot of that getting lost right now with technology being the imagination sucker. And I really value the fact that I had that ability to pursue creative imagination as a child. And I carry that torch with me to this day of being able to make possible my dreams. I would say from my father on the creative level, he taught me how to never slow down, how to never stop. I mean, the man himself he retired 3 years ago. And in that time, he's illustrated 2 books. When COVID started, when quarantine started at the beginning of March last year, he did a COVID illustration every single day, illustrating the 1917 Spanish influenza and the COVID crisis back then. And he created a beautiful 90-page book. He illustrated 1 piece a day for a month, for 3 months. So that right there, just that drive and that ceaseless energy to just continue. And I think a big thing that he taught me is to have fun. I think, as I was saying earlier, like when you do something a lot, even if it's your dream job, it gets tiresome, it gets cumbersome, it gets old, and you get burnt out. And I think that's something that my father taught me, is to just reconsider these opportunities and to think of them as a fun adventure. That's how I look at a lot of the creative work that I do. It's a gift that I am allowed to do, even when it does seem cumbersome. He taught me that. He also taught me how to be personable. My father is a storyteller, and he is one of the most social human beings that you will possibly meet. He is really deeply interested in the human story, no matter what it is, and no matter how challenging it is. So he really taught me how to be invested in other people. And I definitely see that gift that he provided me with as a tool that I used to find success in being an artist, because as Andy Warhol proved, you don't necessarily have to be the best artist in the books. You have to instead be a personable community member and to facilitate something beyond your art, and instead, just be a facilitator of community, which is how I strongly believe I found some creative success in Bellingham, just being an active community member. So that's my dad. Now, on the other end of the spectrum is my mother, she's a scientific illustrator. Actually, if you see Botanic Interest seeds, they're the seed packets that have beautiful illustrations on them. She does those. She worked at the Natural History Museum. Both of my parents worked at the Natural History Museum growing up. If you ever saw that movie, A Night at the Museum, that was like every afternoon of mine after school, hanging out with dinosaur bones and going on fossil digs and seeing the massive life-size dioramas being painted. So she's a scientific illustrator, and she was a hustler. She was a freelance illustrator. She still is to this day a freelance illustrator. she taught me how hard it is. She is wildly successful and insanely creative. And she taught me how it's a constant struggle and a hustle. You have to continue marketing yourself. You have to continue to reinvent yourself as technology changes. You have to adapt. She taught me how to work my ass off. That woman does not sleep. she goes to bed at around 3 a.m. every night. Wow. Because she works so hard, but she has a prolific body of work and she's continuing to adapt and continue to thrive. So those are some of the gifts that my family taught me growing up in a creative household that I continue to carry to this day and that I owe a lot of my success to.
In previous conversation and just kind of getting to know you through, some of the blogs that are on your website, balance is one of those things that you really, I think, hold to be very important to you. And, we talk about fun and work. It's not always fun, not all the time. Obviously, sometimes it's that grind and that kicks in. But tell me a little bit more about how do you find fun on the days that, and maybe this can speak to other entrepreneurs out there, other artists, other business owners. How do you find the fun, or how do you push through those days where it's not fun? But how do you find the fun in every day with what you do?
Well, I think that there are a couple of answers to that. And the first is podcast, Audible. I mean, for my work, I'm able to just, if I'm painting a mural, I'm able to shut off and just stare at a wall for 12-hour days over and over and over. It's pretty tedious work that can be just eye-crossing and mind-bending. So I really value listening to groovy tunes. If you are ever doing any tedious work by yourself, invest in your happiness and buy yourself a good pair of headphones and a rad book on Audible. I'm currently listening to Shantaram, which is mind-blowing.
Mind blown.
New York Times, The Daily. I just love sparking my imagination and my knowledge while I'm working. That is a very simple answer to your question. A second answer to finding fun while working is just getting involved with the right people, getting a team together with people who you think are rad, who you're inspired by, and who you have fun with. Collaboration is a huge tool to success. I have done some super, super rad collaborations, whether it's with other artists like Max McNett. He's who I painted the big mural in downtown Bellingham on the Puget Sound Energy building with. And we had a blast every single day. We worked alongside each other, and every single night we would have beers and decompress at Boundary Bay Brewery and get back up and do it all over again the next day and the next day and the next. And that he was really a lifesaver. But also getting involved with rad collaborations, like did one with Hest this summer, which is a really sick car mattress, like a blow-up mattress company. They're out of Seattle, and they're just a wildly creative group of people. Did a sweet collaboration with Nalgene and Epic Water Filters, wow, which is a company owned by a friend in Boulder. And just, Werner Paddles, just meeting rad people and getting to work together, dream together, and create together. So that's a big thing.
Yeah.
And then the other end of the spectrum is the idea of balance, because that's what we're all striving, right? As grown adults, we realize there are not enough hours in the day, or there are way too many hours in the day with this pandemic, working from home, living at home, living and breathing in your partner's space, or emptiness, or silence. So I think that balance is a really huge component to finding joy and happiness in work and, of course, life. We all have different needs, but I think for myself, my 3 domains of balance are 1, health and recreation. I have to get out and I have to run or mountain bike or take a quick ski every single day. And that's for my personal sanity, very important to me. My second one is community. I think my community elevates me. They're so stinking important. And I think I am bound to happiness so long as I have my friends in my life. And family is part of that. Family is the community. And the third is just work. I think that for myself, I do have the gift of working for myself and creating for myself and for the general public. I think that there is so much value in having meaningful work, no matter what you do, and finding value and meaning in your profession because of the fact that we spend the majority of our time working. We spend 8 hours, or if you're me, I spend about 12 hours a day working. That's no joke. And you better like what you do, and you better find value. Are you creating positive contributions to the world within your work? That's a question that I ask myself a lot. And I found that balance. Now, I'm not saying that the trifecta of community, recreation, and work is always equal, because it sure isn't. I can definitely admit that in the past few years, when I've been launching my mural business and Hydroscape stickers, I've neglected my community once or twice, but they are forgiving. And, just refocusing, recalibrating, and getting back on track when I need to.
Well, that's how you know that they're the right people, right? You surrounded yourself with the right people that you can go and continue on your journey. And then when you come back, they're like, hey, we missed you, but it's all good. We're still here. We still love you. You're still doing your thing. One interesting thing that you talked about was, and a lot of people that watch this show and listen to this podcast are entrepreneurs or people that are wanting to start their own business or start into their own creative endeavor. And I don't know how many times you've probably heard, well, you work for yourself, so why don't you just you can take this time off? Or wait a minute, that's not how that works. What is that like for you? Because a lot of people have struggled to find balance, and to say that we're always perfectly balanced as entrepreneurs is just, it's not humanly possible, right? Sometimes it's busier, sometimes it's slower. How have you figured out a way to weave in, whether it's going on a 900 kilometer bike ride in the mountains of Canada or skiing every day, or how do you weave that in with getting because you're running a business. How do you weave that in with getting the things done on a timeline?
Well, first off, penciling it in and having boundaries. I don't know if other entrepreneurs who are watching this have the issue that I have, which is it's hard to step away from my work. I could work all day, every day, and not even bat an eye, because my business is my baby and I need to cultivate it to grow. I'm in that early parent phase where I just want to give it my all always. The important thing is recognizing, no, I need a break. I need time away. So penciling in, a month-long bike tour or penciling in a 3-day weekend. I also think along those lines, though, is having boundaries. Not penciling in a 4-month bike tour, because it is easy once you give yourself an inch to take a mile. One 3-day weekend can turn into 6 3-day weekends, and all of a sudden you realize that you've taken 6 weeks off in one term. And so I think it's important to have boundaries, but also force a break. The second step to that is setting yourself up to have systems that allow you to do that. The first year of my business, focusing on Hydroscape stickers, which is my sticker company, I didn't have systems in place that allowed me to take a long break due to the fact that it was primarily e-commerce and I was getting orders every single day and I needed to be the one to fulfill them, ship them out, so I wasn't making customers waiting. Just an email saying I'll be back in the office in 2 months didn't suffice. So I recognized that and set myself up to I hired on a distribution employee, and he's amazing. And so he's the one that takes all of my orders, processes them, and ships them. And he's a godsend. So I think I recognized that I was at a point in my business where I was able to hire on somebody to fulfill one of these roles that I had been doing. And so I think that's a big component of being an entrepreneur, is recognizing, well, I think it's very important to do every role yourself at the beginning, from marketing and branding to sales to manufacturing and distribution. Learn your systems. It's so important. You need to learn the way that your wheel spins before you can start pawning it off to other people. So I spent about 1.5 years working overtime, doing all of the things that I just described, in addition to YouTubing and reading all night long how to actually do those things, because I was not a salesperson. I had no idea what MSRP meant or what SKU meant or anything. So I learned all that there is to know. And then once I had gained that knowledge, understanding, and I realized that I had the success and the amount of inventory and sales coming in that I did have enough money to be able to hire on somebody else, which was really important.
Hey, it's Leo. I am a local real estate broker and owner of the Cohen Group Northwest, a team powered by the Molyot Group Realtors. If you're in the area and want to grab coffee or beers and talk business or real estate, shoot the Cohen Group a message on your favorite social media platform. And thank you for listening to the show.
But you're running a commission business, which is basically based on you showing up and doing the work, right? Mm-hmm. And then you have a completely different business structure, which is e-commerce. Do you have two separate parts of your brain that go, all right, right now it's commission work. This is how I'm going to complete this. And this is how I'm running my e-commerce business. How does your brain work when you're separating the two businesses?
So that was an interesting journey getting there, because 2 years ago when I had left teaching and was just jumping into the domain of being a full-time artist, I was taking absolutely any job I could get, from mural work to graphic design work to painting commissions to painting of dog commissions to just absolutely and putting together my own fine art shows and doing my own personal work. So that got pretty overwhelming really quickly. It's challenging being a pawn, being a marionette with a paintbrush, just fulfilling. The amount of creative energy that it takes to only fulfill commissions over and over and over and reinvent the wheel of a creative process for every single project, whether it's a $300 micro logo to a $7,000 fine art painting, it all takes creative energy. And that I was getting very much burnt out on. So the ultimate goal to be an artist, as far as I've found, is to create some sort of passive income so that you can generate a base level of income and have space and time to create your fine art. I realized that graphic design is not my forte. I am definitely not in love with working on computers to that extent. Vector art is the bane of my existence. So I determined that murals were really fun. So I determined that murals were what I wanted to focus my fine art commission on, or all of my commission projects were isolated to murals, in addition to myself creating my own personal fine art projects. Concerning those boundaries, I realized a year ago that murals were breaking my body. Last summer, I couldn't ride a bike from June until October because of a pinched nerve in my vertebrae due to painting murals. I had heard that when I first got into the business, that murals were really hard on your body. Well, it turns out it's very true. Climbing scaffolding, reaching your arm up, looking up for 12 hours at a time, it just really wore me down. So I have to limit the amount of projects that I take on. So I created the boundary of only taking on large public murals. I'm not doing residential murals, because if I have this small amount of creative energy, I really have to designate it to something that can be enjoyed by all, that makes positive impact for the community as a whole, versus just someone's house, which I'm so honored to get these inquiries, but that's the boundary that I created. And then concerning passive income, whether it's a royalty for a song or a book or any piece of literature, or whether it's printing something that can be reprinted and sold in wholesale accounts, that's really a dream come true. So how I came up with my passive income project, which is Hydroscape stickers, I'll just kind of dive into that. It was really a little twist of fate and a lot of luck. When I was painting the large mural down at Puget Sound Energy, if you haven't seen it, it's the largest mural in the state of Washington. It's the length of 2 football fields by 60 feet tall. It's over 200,000 square feet. And
if you haven't seen it, you haven't walked in Bellingham, because if you walk anywhere downtown Bellingham by the waterfront down there, you can't miss it. I mean, you can see it from pretty much anywhere down in that area. So you should go walk. Everybody that's watching this needs to go for a walk if they haven't seen it.
Yeah. So it's really big.
Yeah.
Yeah, down on Cornwall Street. But it's a very, very long, wide iteration of a very graphic iteration of the Cascade Mountain Range. And so when Max and I were painting it, I'm looking at this really long drawing of these mountains. And I was thinking, man, that would be so cool as a sticker. But then, of course, I'm like, but it's too wide of a sticker. Like, what would be the purpose of this sticker? And as I was sipping on my hydro flask, looking at this mural, imagining stickers, I had this aha moment where I'm looking at my water bottle and looking at this long, wide mountain, and I'm thinking, that would be so sweet wrapped around the water bottle. Then I'm like, but it would be covering itself up as you overlap it. And then I'm like, well, not if you taper it. And with that came the birth of the infinity sticker. So I realized that I had this, I was thinking, like, everyone has stickers on their water bottles, but I've never heard of a wedge-shaped, really long sticker that creates a 360-degree landscape. And that was just this golden moment where I realized, I think I have an idea that has not been done before. I immediately realized and recognized the fact that this was something that I needed to capitalize on real fast. I hit up my friend Zach, who designed Patagonia's black hole bags. He has an amazing long list of rad product design, and he's just a business and design guru. So I called him up and I'm like, I need business advice and I need it quickly. I think I have a great idea. And I sat with him for a few hours and he just gave me the rundown of how to manufacture, how to market, how to become a business person with a product in the outdoor industry. Pretty basic. I mean, I was a fish out of water. I had no idea. But I would say the most valuable piece of information that he gave me was, you need to get from crawling to sprinting with this idea before someone rips it off. And you need to get from crawling to sprinting as fast as you can, but you cannot miss a single step along the way when it came to the idea of manufacturing details, shipping details, marketing details, sales. That was just such valuable information of how to be as quality as I can be with this product development and the process of getting it from point A to point Z as effectively and quickly as I possibly could. So from after that meeting, I just worked my butt off, found the right team, and boom, we're now in over 150 wholesale accounts, retail shops around the US, and including REI, and maybe Whole Foods is knocking at our door. So moving
keep
a lot
knocking,
of
Whole Foods, keep knocking.
Yeah.
Obviously it takes a lot of hard work, but like, how much attention to detail, what did you do to take it from walking to or crawling to sprinting? What was, I mean, obviously you don't have to get into the weeds about it, but what were some bigger pieces that were like, this is what I have to do consistently, and I have to do this fast, and I have to hire this person? Like, what were your key, like, first steps to get to sprinting?
First and foremost, having good products, having good designs. So I created about 6 designs right off the bat that I got a lot of interest in. The first 4 were iterations of the mural of the North Cascades mountain range, just different color variations of those. I created a design featuring Arches National Park and one of Mount Rainier with ski tracks and just this snowy scene. So just starting out with good design, fun design, eye-catching variety. And the next step was manufacturing. And I really, I was torn between getting them printed in China for 5 cents a pop or getting them printed locally for 500% that. For a lot more money. And I realized I really wanted quality control. I really value limiting the carbon footprint of my business. And I really value supporting local economy. The Bellingham economy or just Bellingham businesses have done so much wonderful things for myself and for supporting my art that I really wanted to pass the torch. So I found that one of the best sticker printers was literally on my block. They're a few hundred feet away from me. So I started working with Andrew and Carlos over at Stickers for Days, and we have grown together so splendidly, and they just give me the best service. We're now a team, and their turnaround, like we have a very symbiotic relationship. So we've really served each other well. So that's my manufacturing and quality control. I would say, in answer to your question, one of the most essential keys to finding success in the development of a business and becoming an entrepreneur is having phenomenal mentors. Some of them landed in my lap, like my father and my partner, but others I sought out. So I, for example, I wanted my stickers to hang alongside every single Hydro Flask water bottle in any retail store. So I reached out to the salespeople for Hydro Flask. And one of them, whose name I'll leave to be private, but he reached out to me. He said, "You've got a great product. Unfortunately, we only sell 6 companies, and they were large companies like Hydro Flask. They're like, so unfortunately, we're not going to do sales for you. However, you seem cool. I would be happy to mentor you on sales."
Wow.
So this gem of a human being has met me numerous times. If ever I have a question, he's there to answer and to guide me.
There's 2 things that come to mind. The first thing is, as a business owner and entrepreneur, it's so, especially when you're in manufacturing or e-commerce, you come to this crossroads over and over. Well, this will give me a better bottom line because you're still running a business. But the other side is investing back in your community. And it sounds like that's been such a big piece of, your success getting to this point. So you made a choice to invest back, understanding that it's about longevity. It's about giving back and building up your community where you live.
Absolutely. I'm
Huge
such a
kudos for that.
strong believer in that. Yeah, from getting, locally sourcing my products to donating to causes, to the Restore. I'm working with Skagit Valley Fisheries right now, doing a little project with them, and, just giving back. It's so important, and being a good community member and a steward. As Bellingham grows at a very rapid pace, I fear disconnect within our community. I mean, I used to live in Seattle, and there was the Seattle freeze where you ignore your neighbors. And when I moved to Bellingham, it was the exact opposite. And so I think the best thing that we can do as it grows is to just continue to facilitate this great community vibe and, scratch each other's backs, of course, masked up. Yep. But no, I think that there's so much value to that. So hopefully we can keep it within our city and surrounding regions.
Tell me about that time when you were like just starting out as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, and going, okay, I think I should be charging this much. And then you do a commission and you're like, wow, that was way too little for my time. Tell me about this whole process, because a lot of people that watch this are trying to figure out what their value and their worth is. What was that process like for you as a new entrepreneur in determining your value?
Money is my arch nemesis. I hate dealing with money. I hate talking about money, as I'm sure 3/4 of the people watching this can empathize with. I would say I started out my practice as an artist undercharging everything, doing things virtually for free. When it, came down to time and materials, I was giving away my art and my services, which in turn allowed me to be seen and to get some momentum within the community, to get recognized. I think offering my work at reasonable prices did serve a very good purpose in being able to get out there. As an artist, I think that's popular. That's really important, because there are so many other people doing what you do and doing it very well. I finally got to a point, though, where I realized I'm getting enough commissions, I'm getting enough interest that I can begin to step up my pricing. And I did it at a tiered rate. I didn't just jump from $30 an hour to $100 an hour overnight. And I think flexibility is also a very important thing. So for example, the pricing of a mural, I do have a standard rate per square footage based off of the surface condition or access to a mural. But if it's a nonprofit who really wants a mural, I'll offer them a very different price than what I would quote a project for Google. So,
Right.
it's just, I have to be flexible with the pricing of things and just really valuing the importance of the project versus making money, and recognizing though that I am worth something, and I can't necessarily give it away for free always. So yeah, there's quite a few people interested in doing murals who write me asking me how much they should charge for their murals. I think that none of us can give away our art for free because time and materials cost something. The materials alone for a mural, from renting scaffolding or a boom lift to buying paint, can easily get up to $1,000 without batting an eye. And I think that for somebody to say like, oh yeah, I'll do a mural for you for $1,200, I mean, that's crime. This is a massive, massive piece of fine art. And sure, like getting a wall is really important. Like actually having a wall to create art on is valuable in and of itself, and it's marketing once you put up a piece. But I do think that there is a base level that mural artists should be charging just to really set a standard for businesses and patrons of the arts who would like something like a mural. I do think that there are base costs that every mural artist aspiring or active should stand by, so that the market doesn't get flooded by free art that in turn is just ripping off artists and taking advantage of their services.
At the end of the day, I agree with you. I think money, and when you start talking about money, it pulls really the soul out of what you're doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you focus on the service, whatever it is, between all the way from what you do to what I do to everything in between, if you start talking about money and you start thinking about money, wouldn't you agree that it just drains the soul out of it, right? But you still need to make money, right? You're still running a business.
Yeah.
And so I think there was a moment for you where you went from this kind of inch deep, mile wide, to all of a sudden you're like, well, I need balance in my life. And these are the projects that I'm most passionate about. And I could do more of these projects, or I could just do less and only this kind of niche. Tell me about that tipping point for you as a business owner, as an artist, where you go, yeah, well, I really appreciate your inquiry, but this is what I do. Yeah. And being okay when you turn people down.
Yeah, so I would look at that in the span of 3 years as an independent artist. The first year, I didn't say no to a single job. I took on a ton of work. I burnt myself out, but I just was definitely spinning and so stoked on the fact that I was getting work as a fine artist, having, that was my dream job. And I was actually living it out. So I was getting a ton of work and didn't say no. Around, I don't know if you're into New Year's resolutions, but I'm one with the resolutions, at least as a point of recalibrating what you're doing. And it was after that first year, my resolution was to start saying no. So I recognized I am getting enough commissions with murals and fine art that I can start saying no to graphic design projects, because those were the ones that made my heart feel soulless. And I was making enough money with the other jobs that I didn't need them. So I began to kind of get a little bit more nitpicky about the projects that I was taking on and just creating those boundaries. If it involved graphic design, if it involved vector art, no. And then this year, I'm very grateful for my partner, who was the one who really held me accountable. Hydroscape stickers was taking off. It has a lot of momentum, and that has opportunity to be a very lucrative business. And I was not giving it enough TLC in years past when I've been doing graphic design projects or painting commissions that, I could make $1,000 here and there, but it's not regenerating income. And I realized that, and my partner really helped open my eyes, like, your business is on fire right now. You're moving stickers. You should be putting your energy into that to set yourself up for success 10 years from now. Like, cultivate your business before taking on more creative overload projects that are just consuming your time. So this year, I decided to really step back from a lot of those creative projects, including my own fine art. And instead, I'm just cultivating my business and I'm making murals. Now, I'm not stepping away from the mural work because that is what makes my soul feel full. That's creating positive impact for communities. It's using my art to have a voice, to create joy in people's lives, and to, I can't say it enough, create positive impact in the world. And that's really important to me. Now, on the other end of that spectrum, sure, my stickers bring people joy, but being a business owner might not be as feel good and give me the warm fuzzies as, let's say, painting a mural is, but it's setting myself up for success down the road. It's building up my retirement. It's providing jobs for other people. It's a very important gig, I think, to set myself up for comfort down the road. So I'm doing my time, I'm building my teams, I'm building my business, and hopefully down the road, I will be able to have that mostly automated and be able to get back into the full-time fine art practice.
What is that like? You like not having a business background, just like, myself, I don't have a business degree or business background. What is that like for you to say, all right, this is the part of it that I love, the creative part. But if I'm going to get to that point that your partner was talking about of the, creating this retirement, this future of being able to really gravitate more back towards what you really want to do, how did you did you just teach yourself how to scale and leverage, or did you watch YouTube videos, or did you talk to your mentors, or how did you figure out, like, okay, step one, this is what I need, this is my need, and step two, I have to fill it with the right person? How did you do those two things without any background on how to
trial and error? But ultimately, I determined what I needed and what I didn't want to do. For example, packaging and going to the post office every day. I did that for 1.5 years, and I realized this is not how I want to be spending my time. I was spending 3 hours a day just building boxes, packaging stickers, printing labels, and going to the post office. And I realized that is absolutely not the best use of my time. And I have the ability to hire somebody and provide a job for someone to do that. So that was no questions asked. That was definitely something that I realized I need to outsource this work. There are other more slippery domains, for example, marketing, branding, and social media. These are things that I don't want to do, but I can do them. And if I set up systems, for example, using a program like Preview, in which I can plan all of my posts, type in all of my, my notes on them in advance and just set up a timer for them. Like, that's an automated system that allows me to just check my social media off the list, and dedicating a little bit of time every week to, fine-tuning my websites, or working on my branding, or working on promotional material and all of that good stuff. I have definitely sought out help and hired independent contractors to help me out with that stuff. And they're absolutely valuable and have done some great work for me. But I think that's something unlike the distribution that I can do, and it's not soul sucking to me. So yeah, it's just about finding the jobs that I need to outsource or would be better off outsourcing versus jobs that I can just make time for with a smile on my face, hop in the hot tub and do a little marketing, just find some times that are joyful for me to be able to bust out the jobs that aren't necessarily the fun part of my business, but jobs that I am capable of doing.
Hot tub marketing. That is a thing that you just created that.
Absolutely.
It's now a thing.
That's what remote working is. It's hot tub working.
On that note, let's talk a little bit about nature. I think you and I both share a love of nature. And one of the things that I got fascinated with is this story about, obviously you're very wrapped up in the biking community. I mean, were you sitting around at a brewery and having a beer and this idea of doing this 900-kilometer bike ride came up?
Yep. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about this spur of the moment. Hey, let's go ride through the mountains.
Well, I have always had an affinity for bike touring. That seed was planted when I was in 8th grade, and I was sitting at a cafe in Oregon, the Otis Cafe, and I saw 2 people with heavily loaded bikes and we stopped and talked to them. My very talkative dad, who I was telling you about, of course, he stops them. Hey, what are you doing? What are all these bags for? And they were riding from Alaska to Patagonia. And here I am just starry-eyed looking at them like, that is the coolest thing that I've ever seen in my entire life. I want to be you when I grow up. And so in my early 20s, I was riding a lot of bikes. I was part of a bike club in Seattle called .83. We were all totally enamored with bikes and started doing some touring. So my first big tour was riding from Seattle down to San Francisco. And wow. With that, just the seed was planted. In terms of biking with climbing gear, when I was 26, I had a little heartbreak. My first love and I broke up. And at that time, we were doing a lot of riding and climbing. And I realized when I was 26 that for once in my life, like I had always relied on partners to go on adventures with and to really fill in where I left off with planning and preparation for adventures and climbing trips and whatnot. And for once in my life, when my partner and I broke up, I realized I think I can do this on my own. Like my toolbox is full. I have all the gear and I have the knowledge and I got this. Combining my favorite sports, I packed my climbing gear into my saddlebags, and my objective was to connect Squamish to Banff, all on bike, solo. So I left from Seattle and did a month-long solo bike tour through Canada, across British Columbia, down the Icefields Parkway, and just met the maker of bliss. I just realized that is perfect happiness. I had a very Siddhartha moment of enlightenment on that trip, being alone on my bike with all of the gear that I needed to play hard. And I realized what can be accomplished on 2 wheels. My next trip beyond that was a solo trip across Vietnam, Laos, and Thailand with my climbing gear. Then I realized I wanted to start, I realized being alone on these trips was really hard, especially in Southeast Asia. I didn't like being alone. So my next trip was my partner and I traversed the Alps to climb the top 10 classic alpine routes on bicycle. So that was a big one. We were carrying our ice axes, 2 twin ropes, full racks, and traversed from France to the eastern end of the Alps in Italy on our bikes and did some amazing alpine. Yeah, after that, I realized, that was my ex-boyfriend. So I needed a girlfriend to plan future trips with, and that's where my girl Robin came along, and the birth of the trip that you just alluded to, which was our Bike to Bugs trip. She and I have done a few really fun trips together. A few years ago, we rode from Bellingham to the Wind Rivers, where we did some awesome alpine climbing. And then last year, we ended up riding on the Trans-Canada Trail from Bellingham up to the Chilliwack and across on some really rugged single track, and ended at the Bugaboos Provincial Park for some rad alpine climbing. So I think
Wow.
those trips are almost, I'm going to tie it back into the initial conversation that we had about imagination and manifestation and dreaming. With recreation, I think some of these things just sound absurd. Like, you're going to what? You're going to pack ice axes and twin ropes and climb, all supported by bike. And if you dream it, you can make it happen. And that's something, if so long as you give yourself the amount of time and are well prepared. And so that's how I've accomplished these trips, which have been wildly successful.
So what's amazing is that it seems like there's this symbiotic relationship with your recreation and your art and where you draw inspiration. And so maybe tell me a little bit more about when you do these things, when you set aside time to recharge your soul and to get out there in nature. So much of your art all of your art is about nature, right? It's about, do you find yourself coming back with like recharged inspiration for some of your projects, for some of your fine art, for some of your stickers, things like that?
Absolutely. Heck yeah. I'm going to use a word that is so taboo. I can't believe I'm using it, but I am. Flow. Like the flow state. When you're biking or, climbing or snowboarding, you can reach this point of just forgetting about the world and forgetting about what's stressing you out. You just exist in nature, and you are just lost in, I think just that beautiful state of energetic movement that I personally can only find when recreating in nature and being in nature. It's this just very powerful state of energy that I do try to emulate in my line work, in my paintings. I think that nature is perfect. Nature is absolutely beautiful. As much as I like man-made things, sure, I appreciate architecture. I appreciate Apple computer design, industrial design. I don't think anything, it all pales in comparison to fractals found in a seashell or flowers or trees. So I just think it's perfection. I try to emulate that in my art.
It's beautiful. And I think it's important that everybody has time for introspection to find their constant, right? And obviously, I think a lot of people that live in Bellingham, I think you probably would agree, because you moved away from Seattle like I did, to get the heck away from all the buildings and all the people and all the traffic. But I think there's a common ground of a constant of nature in Bellingham. And that's one of the most amazing things that I've found. Pretty much everybody, I've never met someone that lives in Bellingham that says, yeah, I didn't move here for nature or for like being near the ocean or the mountains. They're like, this is a haven, right?
Absolutely. So, I mean, with that huge mural downtown, the big one, when I was asked to design a piece for this corridor that was 2 blocks long, what would be the largest mural in the state of Washington, I was thinking about what I can put on that, whether it would just be a very abstract geometric design, just filled with beautiful colors and just a nice backdrop. But ultimately, there were a lot of people living in their cars at the base of that wall. And I thought, if I'm going to put up this massive work of art, I want the mountains in the city. So that spurred, it's like the mountains are my happy place. And all of these people living in their cars at the base of this wall in this industrial area, that I can't imagine that they have the privilege that we have to go to the mountains on the weekends, or, they're at our fingertips. So why not bring the mountains to them. And that's been a huge source of inspiration for my mural work, is just creating beautiful aesthetic iterations of natural areas in urban places.
Well, that I did not know that about the mural, and that makes me appreciate it even more. And as I've gotten to know your art, just being around town and seeing it is kind of like it's a little uplifting moment of like, oh, that's one of Gretchen's, one of her murals. So thank you so much for making Bellingham more and more beautiful and more cohesive and community oriented. So I just wanted to thank you so much and for your contribution to continuing to make Bellingham a collaborative community and also maintaining that. I mean, people like you and I and Jack, who came on the show that we both know, and many other people that are collaborative. This is the root of our whole community, the small business owners, the entrepreneurs, the community members. So I wanted to thank you so much for your time, first of all. Thank you for sharing your art and your creativity with all of us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on, and I wish you well.
Building Bellingham is a community podcast exploring leadership, challenges, failures, and business with entrepreneurs right here in Bellingham, Washington. You can watch interviews live and be the first to hear about upcoming guests on the Building Bellingham Facebook and Instagram pages. Again, I'm your host, Leo Cohen of the Cohen Group Northwest. This episode was produced and edited by Cooper Hansley and Tiffany Holden. Our logo was designed by Sam Vogt. To learn more about the team behind the podcast, search Cohen Group NW on Google, Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn.